Why was her locker empty before the funeral? Arthur's voice trembled, barely louder than the hum of the hallway lights. No one answered. The young headmaster's assistant just shifted uneasily, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "It's protocol," she muttered, and hurried away, leaving the old man standing in the echo of his own question. 2 years had passed, yet every night Arthur Hale still cleaned the same tile corridors where his granddaughter, Lily, once laughed between classes. He had mopped the same floor where her memorial flowers wilted, where candles burned until the janitor lights drowned them out. Time had turned her tragedy into a rumor, her name into a whisper teachers avoided saying. But tonight, the silence broke. The school was empty. Only the soft squeak of Arthur's mop, the slow drip of the faucet, and the faint buzz of a flickering exit sign. He was dragging a supply cabinet to fix a loose hinge when something metallic rolled out from behind it. It clinked twice, light catching on a small silver curve. Arthur froze. His breath stilled. He crouched slowly, knees aching, and picked it up, a heart-shaped locket. He turned it over in his palm, scratched, bent, but unmistakable. Inside the hinge, a tiny engraving, Lily H. He remembered giving it to her on her 16th birthday, with a photo of her parents on one side and him on the other. The chain was broken, the clasp twisted. It looked torn from her neck. For a moment, the world narrowed to the trembling of his fingers. His chest tightened, his throat stung with unshed years. Then something else caught his eye, a small, folded piece of paper stuck behind the cabinet. He pulled it free. It was a printed log from the security office, time-stamped the night Lily fell. The file names were listed neatly, until one line. CM 3A footage deleted. User H. Pritchard. Harold Pritchard, the headmaster. Arthur's stomach turned cold. He had seen that man's face every day, shaking hands with parents, smiling for photographs, preaching about integrity. And all this time, he'd been cleaning floors for him. He slipped the paper into his jacket pocket, folded the locket into his palm, and stood still for a long moment. The air felt heavier now. Every hum of light, every creak of floorboards, every echo of his own steps sounded like a countdown. He made his way to the security room. The door was locked as always, but Arthur still had keys from when he'd been trusted, back when he'd first volunteered to keep busy. The lock clicked softly. Inside, the room glowed faint blue with screens, most black, one flickering. Dust coated everything except the top of the desk, wiped recently. Arthur sat, his reflection flickering faintly in the monitor. He wasn't the man in the photo Lily once carried. His hair was whiter, his eyes duller, but the stillness, the patience, was the same. He pressed a few keys. The log files appeared again. And there it was, a pattern of deletion spanning a week before Lily's death. Every camera around the rooftop access. Every log manually cleared. He leaned back. The chair creaked. A whisper slipped from his lips. "You cleaned it up too well, Harold." A noise behind him. Footsteps. Arthur turned sharply. The night guard, a young man with earbuds dangling, blinked at him. "Mr. Hale, you shouldn't be in here." Arthur's tone was calm, almost gentle. "Just fixing a bulb." The guard shrugged, half smiling. "All right, just lock up when you're done. Camera's been acting weird again." He left without suspicion, the door closing softly behind him. Arthur waited until silence returned. Then he reached for the printer. The machine hummed, stuttered, and spat out 2 copies of the file log. He folded them neatly into a manila envelope and wrote on the front, "For Lily." The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Arthur stared at it. The slow movement of hands, the sound he'd lived by his whole life. Every tick was a reminder. Precision, patience, inevitability. He slipped the envelope into his bag and turned off the lights. Walking to the corridor, he paused at the display case where Lily's photo still sat, framed beneath glass, surrounded by fading paper cranes and dust. Her smile, caught mid-laughter, seemed almost alive. Arthur's reflection hovered beside it, ghost-like. He whispered, "You didn't fall, did you?" A gust of wind from the open window rustled the papers. As if an answer, Arthur left the building through the back door, his steps deliberate. The night air was damp, heavy with the scent of rain. Streetlights glowed pale orange, their reflections stretching across puddles. He walked to his small apartment, every sound amplified in the quiet. The scrape of his shoes, the click of his keys, the soft creak of his front door. Inside, he placed a locket on the table beside a framed photo of his wife. "She looked like you when she laughed," he murmured, voice cracking. "And they took that from her." He sat down, staring at the blank wall ahead. The paper log lay unfolded before him, the letters stark against the lamplight. His hands trembled, but not from age this time, from awakening. He reached for the drawer beside him and pulled out a small wooden box, one he hadn't opened in decades. Inside lay the remnants of his old life, a chemistry badge from his teaching days, a photo of his classroom, a faded newspaper clipping. Local scientist wins Teaching Innovation Award. Beneath them, sealed in wax paper, a set of vials, labeled with tiny numbers and symbols. He traced them with a fingertip. "You thought I forgot," he whispered. The clock struck 1. Arthur rose, placed a locket in his pocket, and stood before the window. Across the street, the school's lights shimmered faintly in the distance. His reflection stared back. Tired eyes, worn hands, a heart that had run out of reasons to stay quiet. He spoke softly, almost like prayer. "You built your empire on her silence, Harold. But I've spent my life fixing what's broken." His gaze shifted to the table, the log, the locket, the vials. One by one, the pieces of the past aligned, like gears in a clock ready to move again. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant. Arthur didn't flinch. His pulse steadied. The old watchmaker inside him, the man who once measured time to a fraction of a heartbeat, began to count again. In the dark, the ticking grew louder, not from the wall clock, from within him. By morning, the janitor would return to work as usual. But tonight, an old man had found what the world buried, and the first second of his revenge had begun. "Do you still remember the smell of acetone?" The voice in Arthur's head wasn't real. It was his own memory, a whisper from years ago, back when he still stood in front of chalkboards, not mop buckets. He looked down at his trembling hands and smiled faintly. "Yes," he murmured, "I remember everything." Morning sunlight crept through the high windows of the academy as Arthur pushed his cart down the hallway. To everyone else, he was invisible, the old man in a faded uniform, moving slow, humming low, cleaning what others left behind. But beneath the layers of brushes and rags, the contents of his cart were changing. Each item now had 2 meanings, a tool for cleaning and a weapon for truth. He'd spent the night rearranging it like an engineer rebuilding a machine. The detergent bottles held measured solutions, harmless alone but potent in combination. Beneath the false bottom of a bucket, he'd hidden a small toolkit. Wires, beakers, a soldering pen, and a folded sheet of chemical equations written in his own precise hand. When the hallway emptied, Arthur opened the storage closet. He turned on the dim light, locked the door, and sat on an overturned paint can. The air smelled of dust and bleach. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, one that had been sealed for 20 years. Inside were lesson notes from his teaching days, formulas scribbled beside classroom doodles Lily had made when she'd visit after school. He traced her handwriting with his thumb. Then he turned the page and began to write again. Hydrogen peroxide, sodium bicarbonate, ethanol, combined under pressure. His voice was soft, methodical, as if lecturing an empty class. He paused, listening to the sound of his own breath. The same patience that once helped him teach restless teenagers now guided his hand. He wasn't building explosives or poison. He was building exposure, something visible, undeniable, dramatic enough to make silence impossible. A knock startled him. He snapped the notebook shut. "Arthur?" It was Megan, the young literature teacher, who often brought him coffee. "You in there?" He cleared his throat. "Yes, just cleaning brushes." She smiled when he opened the door, handing him a paper cup. "You're always the first here, aren't you? You make me look lazy." Arthur's lips lifted in a faint smile. Habit of an old man. Her tone softened. "I still can't believe it's been 2 years. Lily loved you so much." The coffee trembled in his grip. "She loved this school," he said quietly. "And this school failed her." Megan's eyes lowered. We all did. A pause. If you ever need to talk. He shook his head gently. Talking never changed what's written. She hesitated, nodded, and left. When her footsteps faded, Arthur poured the coffee into the drain, replaced the lid, and slid the empty cup into his cart. Even garbage had purpose now. He looked at the hallway cameras, small, blinking red eyes mounted high. He knew how to blind them for exactly 10 minutes. That evening, after the students left, Arthur rolled his cart toward the basement. The corridors below the school were a labyrinth of pipes, boilers, and forgotten storage rooms. Here, the walls still remembered the smell of chemicals from when the academy once ran a science department, before budget cuts, before accidents, before they replaced them with younger faces. He set up a small workspace beside the boiler. The pipes hissed softly, masking sound. He unpacked vials and tools, each move deliberate. His hand trembled once as he tightened a clamp, then steadied. The rhythm of work calmed him. Measure, stir, record. The same motions that once built experiments for learning now built proof for justice. He glanced at a dusty mirror hanging by a nail. His reflection looked older than he felt, pale lined, but focused. "You've still got it," he whispered to the ghost in the glass. From his bag, he pulled out the copied security logs and pinned them above the table. He circled names, drew lines, noted times. The pattern grew clear. The headmaster's car entered 30 minutes before Lily's death and left 10 after, unrecorded. A cover-up wrapped in polite silence. Arthur closed his eyes. He remembered the police interview, their words sharp but hollow. "We found no evidence of foul play." He remembered Harold's hand on his shoulder, the pitying tone. She was troubled. Arthur, let her rest. He had believed it because grief made him weak. Not anymore. The next few nights became ritual. By day, he was a quiet janitor. By night, he was the architect of retribution. He collected discarded chemicals from the science lab, rewired old alarms, and fixed broken fixtures with more than screws. Inside each repaired camera box, he had miniature transmitters, silent eyes that recorded everything and streamed it to a private drive he built from scrap computers. No one suspected the janitor, who fixed things, to be the one watching. One night, he found the headmaster's office unlocked. The room smelled of polish and arrogance. Family photos lined the desk. A smiling wife, perfect children, a golden retriever. Arthur's gaze fell on a trophy engraved with, "For excellence in educational leadership." He touched it briefly, then opened the drawer beneath. Documents, donation records, and a black USB drive marked with the school's crest. He slipped it into his pocket and left without a trace. Back in the basement, he plugged it into his old laptop. Files opened, video archives, unedited security clips, ledger entries. Among them, a single folder named Archive Unrestricted, password protected. Arthur stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. He typed Lily's name. Denied. He typed truth. Denied. He typed Harold. Access granted. The screen filled with thumbnails. His hand hovered over one, time-stamped the night she died. He clicked. The footage showed the rooftop door. 2 figures. Lily and a man in a suit. The camera had no audio, but her body language said enough. Shaking her head, backing away, pleading. The man's hand grabbed her arm. Then a sudden shove. She fell backward, disappearing from frame. The man looked down for a second, straightened his tie, and walked away. Arthur's breath hitched. He covered his mouth, forcing the scream back down. His vision blurred, tears burning hot and useless. He replayed it once, twice, until every motion etched into his memory. Then he saved it under a new name, Justice_1. The next morning, he arrived at the school before dawn. The students wouldn't notice that the clocks in every classroom ran 2 minutes slow, except Harold's office, which he adjusted to perfect time. Arthur's quiet smile returned. Timing mattered. Precision mattered. It always had. By the end of the week, his cart looked the same to everyone else. Mops, rags, sprays. But hidden inside were circuits, wires, and a plan ticking toward revelation. As he wheeled it past the glass memorial case, he paused once more at Lily's photo. "Almost ready," he whispered. The clock above him struck 6. The echo lingered through the empty hallways like a heartbeat counting down. For the first time in years, Arthur didn't feel old. He felt inevitable. And somewhere deep in the school's network, a hidden file began uploading, 1 second closer to exposure. "Do you believe in ghosts, Harold?" The old man's voice cut through the laughter and applause. It wasn't shouted, yet it silenced the room. The headmaster froze mid-speech, champagne glass in hand. Behind him, the school's bright banners fluttered above the stage, gold and white, proud and hollow. Arthur stood at the back of the hall, half hidden by shadows, holding the janitor's cart like a coffin on wheels. His eyes burned calm. No one noticed him slip in. The Founders' Day celebration was in full swing. Parents in expensive coats, board members clinking glasses, the choir singing about legacy and light. Legacy. The word turned bitter in Arthur's mind. Lily's face flashed in his memory, her laughter echoing somewhere between the applause and the hum of the lights above. Earlier that morning, he had stood in the basement, staring at the maze of pipes like an old conductor facing his final symphony. The gas lines hissed faintly, feeding the kitchen, the auditorium, the very air of the school. Each valve had a label he'd memorized, each switch a rhythm only he could read. His cart wasn't for cleaning anymore. It was a control panel, disguised in rags and bottles. Wires ran beneath the mop bucket, connected to a small transmitter built from school radios and a stolen laptop battery. Every second, his fingers had moved with the precision of a clockmaker and the faith of a man with nothing left to lose. By noon, he'd tested the system twice. One signal to cut the power, another to start the reveal. Everything else depended on timing. And Arthur Hale understood time better than anyone alive. Now, as the choir ended and the audience clapped, Harold Pritchard stepped forward to deliver his annual speech about truth, growth, and the promise of youth. Arthur's lip twitched. The liar's voice filled the hall, smooth as oil. 2 years ago, we lost a bright young student, a tragedy that reminded us of our duty to protect and guide the next generation. Arthur's hand tightened around the cart handle. He whispered under his breath, "You guided her off a roof." A teacher beside him glanced back. Arthur smiled faintly, as if lost in thought, and adjusted the rag over the transmitter's light. The moment Harold raised his glass to dedicate the school's new wing in Lily's name, Arthur pressed the first switch. The lights flickered once. Then again, the sound system cracked. The projector at the back wall sputtered to life. Harold frowned, signaling to the technician, but before anyone could react, the screens behind him filled with static, and then with Lily's face. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Parents stood. Students turned pale. On every monitor, a date flashed, March 12th, 10:47 p.m., followed by footage from the rooftop camera. No music, no narration, just silence and the raw truth. Lily arguing, backing away, pleading. Then the shove. Harold's own face, frozen in the blue glow, straightening his tie. The audience erupted. The headmaster stammered, This is fake. Someone's..." But Arthur pressed the second switch. The power died completely. Emergency lights bathed the room in red. The only sound was the faint hiss of the gas lines mixing with the ventilation. Panic spread like fire, voices shouting, chairs scraping, people rushing for exits. But the doors wouldn't open. Arthur had sealed them just enough to buy himself 1 minute. On stage, Harold shouted orders, sweating, his calm mask cracking. "Call security. Get the..." A spotlight snapped on, the only one powered by Arthur's battery rig. It illuminated the janitor, standing at the center aisle, his cart beside him, his uniform stained with dust and time. Arthur's voice carried through chaos, low, clear, deadly controlled. "I cleaned up after your sins, Harold. Every night, every lie, every floor that hid her blood." Arthur, listen." Harold's tone turned soft, pleading. "You don't understand what you're doing. It was an accident. She fell." Arthur's laughter was dry. "Empty. I've seen the tape. You didn't let her fall. You watched her die." Cameras blinked to life again. Arthur had synced them to record the moment. He stepped closer. "You said she was troubled. You said I should move on." He reached into the cart and lifted the silver locket between his fingers. Its chain swung slowly, catching the red light. She wasn't the one who was troubled. You were. Harold tried to move off stage, but the crowd was pressing in now, eyes wide with horror and rage. Someone screamed for the police. Another shouted, "He killed her!" Arthur didn't raise his voice. You built the school on her silence. Tonight, she speaks. He turned toward the nearest camera, meeting its lens like an old confession. For every father who buried truth because power told him to. For every child who trusted the wrong teacher. He pressed the final switch. Sparks burst overhead. The fire alarm screamed. The gases stopped, cut off before ignition. Timed to perfection. The lights flickered back on, restoring chaos but sparing lives. Arthur's setup wasn't made to destroy. It was made to expose. The servers uploaded the footage to every news outlet he'd routed overnight. Within seconds, the world outside began to see. Harold stumbled forward, grabbing Arthur by the arm. "You've ruined me," he spat. Arthur looked down at the man, his expression unreadable. "No," he said softly. "You did that the night you touched her." Security guards burst through the side doors, rushing between them. The headmaster was dragged away, shouting, his perfect voice cracking into raw fear. Cameras flashed. Reporters who'd attended for the gala now filmed the scandal. Arthur stepped back, breathing slowly. The crowd's noise faded around him like wind after a storm. Megan, the young teacher, found him near the exit, trembling. "Arthur, what did you do?" He looked at her, eyes gentle again. "I just cleaned the dirt off the truth." Sirens wailed outside, distant but growing closer. He pushed his cart toward the back door, each wheel squeaking like a heartbeat. Before leaving, he turned once more toward the hall. The banners still hung, though one had fallen, catching on the edge of the stage. Behind it, Lily's face remained frozen on the final frame, her smile before the fall. Arthur whispered, "You can rest now, love." He stepped out into the night air, cool and silent. The dawn light touched his face as police cars flooded the street. He didn't run. He didn't hide. The janitor simply walked away, his shoulders heavy but his heart steady. Inside, the clock above the stage ticked back to life, its hands frozen at 12 o'clock, the exact moment when silence turned to justice. And for the first time in 2 years, Arthur Hale felt time move again. "You'll never make it out, old man." Harold's voice echoed off the marble as police lights painted the school walls red and blue. Arthur turned once, the weight of his years and his plan heavy in his breath. "I already did," he said softly, and vanished through the smoke. Outside, dawn crept over the academy's iron gates, soft and pale against the chaos left behind. The night smelled of rain and burned wires. Reporters swarmed the courtyard, cameras flashing, parents shouting, students crying. Inside, the screen still glowed with the final frame of Lily's face. The truth Arthur had freed from silence. He walked through the back alley, his janitor's coat damp, his steps slow but steady. Every sound, the wail of sirens, the static of radios, the shouts for control, faded behind him, in his pocket. The broken locket felt warm against his chest. He pressed it gently, as if it were a pulse still beating. Arthur reached the edge of town before sunrise. He stopped by the small bridge overlooking the river, the one he used to take Lily across every Sunday to buy pastries. The same bakery still stood there, lights flickering on, the scent of bread spilling into the street. He watched from a distance, unseen, remembering her running ahead, her hair catching sunlight like gold. For a moment, the memory almost hurt more than the truth. He sat on the bench, his hands trembling, not from fear but release. For the first time in years, his heart didn't feel hollow. The world finally knew. The monster behind the podium was finished. The system that had called him senile, obsessive, broken. It would have to face the echo of what it buried. A phone buzzed in his pocket. An unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Megan's voice came through, shaky but alive. "Arthur, it's everywhere. Every channel. They're calling a scandal, a cover-up, a murder. You did it." He smiled faintly. "No, we did it. She did it. Her truth did." "They're looking for you," she whispered. "Police say you vanished before they got there." "Were you?" He looked toward the rising sun. Somewhere I should have gone long ago. Arthur, listen. They'll arrest you. Maybe they should, he said quietly. But they can't undo what's done. A pause. He could hear her trying not to cry. She'd be proud of you. His eyes closed. The words hit deeper than she could know. Tell them she wasn't tragedy, Megan. Tell them she was a warning. He hung up and let the phone slip into the river below, watching the ripples fade like closing time on a clock face. His reflection stared back, lined, weary but free. He touched his chest again, feeling the small ticking device beneath his coat pocket. Not a bomb. A timer. He'd rigged it before leaving, synchronized perfectly with the Academy's power restoration. At precisely 8 a.m., the final upload would activate. Unedited files, confessions, emails, everything Hale had buried. The world would see the full truth. He looked at his watch. 7:59, almost time, he murmured. Behind him, a car engine hummed. He turned slightly to see a familiar face. Officer Raymond, the one who'd handled Lily's case years ago. Younger then, indifferent, now older, regret heavy in his eyes. He stepped out slowly, no weapon drawn. Arthur, he said softly, you've caused a storm. Arthur didn't move. No, I just stopped pretending it wasn't already raining. Raymond's gaze dropped to the car in the back seat, confiscated from the scene. They'll want to charge you. Reckless endangerment, hacking, tampering with evidence. Arthur smiled faintly. Good. That means they'll have to admit there was evidence. The officer's jaw tightened. He confessed. Before they took him away, Harold Pritchard admitted everything. Said he panicked. Said she threatened to expose him. Arthur's face hardened. She was 17. She trusted him. I know. Raymond stepped closer. You've done what the law couldn't, but you can't just disappear. People need to hear from you. Arthur turned toward the sunrise again. They heard me already. Every word that mattered was in that video. The officer hesitated, then extended his hand. At least let me drive you somewhere safe. Arthur looked at the hand, but didn't take it. You don't understand. Son, safe doesn't exist for people like me. It's not peace we want, it's balance. The watch on his wrist beeped once. 8 o'clock. In the distance, faintly, the Academy's PA system crackled to life. Arthur's pre-recorded voice echoed across every hallway, calm and clear. The truth doesn't need violence to be heard. It only needs time. Students in classrooms froze. Teachers wept. And on every screen, Lily's photo appeared one last time, with a single line beneath it. For the ones they silenced. Arthur listened to the echo drifting across the wind. The officer followed his gaze as the sun climbed higher. What will you do now? He stood slowly, the morning light catching the tears that had long refused to fall. I'll go home, he said simply. Where's home, Arthur? He smiled faintly. Where she is. The officer's breath caught, unsure what he meant. But Arthur was already walking toward the bridge's far end, the river mist swallowing him step by step. His figure blurred, his outline fading into dawn until only the echo of his cane against the pavement remained. Back at the Academy, chaos turned to reckoning. News vans lined the streets. Reporters called him a vigilante, a hero, a criminal, a ghost. But in the center of it all, the truth stood unshaken. Harold Pritchard was arrested, charged, and exposed for everything Arthur had uncovered. Inside the old janitor's closet, untouched by police, a single note lay on the workbench beside a broken watch. For every lie cleaned too soon, time will dirty it again. Weeks later, Megan visited the bench by the river. The same bakery behind her, the same morning light. She placed a small bouquet beside the plaque the city had installed, in memory of Lily Hale and the man who made the world remember her. As she turned to leave, a faint ticking sound came from beneath the bench. She looked down, eyes wide. A pocket watch, silver and old, its hands perfectly aligned at 12. Megan smiled through her tears. He couldn't turn back time, she whispered, but he made the world remember it owed him. The river carried the sound of the watches ticking into the distance, merging with the hum of the waking city. And in that endless rhythm, Arthur Hale lived on, an old man whose silence built justice 1 second at a time. Please like and subscribe to this channel.